seems to be coming up. I see 2 or 3 posts about it almost every single day, every single day. And it's just kind of this endless circle. It's just the same thing, the same people going back and forth. But I kind of take a step back and I look at these posts and I'm like, gosh, I feel like people are putting a lot of emotion into these posts. And I think we need to remove our emotions from this and look at it, have that business, that entrepreneurial approach and say, what would I do as a business owner? What's the right move here? And the right move.
What I would like to do is ask you the questions that I would ask if you were just turning 65 and I was trying to figure out what direction that I would help you to find out what's most important to you. Because right now it sounds like you see that this dental and vision is something that you'd like to have at no additional cost. Completely understand that. But what I'd like to do is go through and find out what else is important to you. So that way I can help you make the most informed decision. Some agents might sit in front of you and say, okay, you're ready for an Advantage plan. Let's go ahead and do that. But I want to make sure not to put you in a situation where you're calling me a year from now and saying, Raul, you didn't tell me that I was going to sacrifice this, or this. And so we'll go on in that conversation. Hey everyone, welcome back to Medicare Agent IQ. I'm Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
And you know what? Did you ever watch a movie where there's part 1 and it's pretty good, part 2 is pretty good, and then they go to part 3 and it's not that good?
Home Alone.
That was not good. Rocky 3. Come on, did you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Rocky 3 is a good movie. So this is part 3.
Rocky 4 is the best.
It is, right? So we just keep on going. So today we're gonna do the same thing we did last week, which is what's the move here? Like
part 3.
Part 3, right? And hopefully it's as good as Rocky 3. And so we're gonna go ahead and get started. And just really, again, just the some of the feedback we've gotten from these episodes is, man, this is great because it's helping me just kind of tie up some loose ends. I'm trying. There's things that I hadn't really been able to put the thought in or hadn't experienced, and so it's a good thing to go through. Yeah. So let's go through some questions that we have prepared today.
Yeah, you ready for the first one? I feel like
let's do it.
The first one that we have here today has been kind of a hot topic these days with everything that's happening and all the headwinds that the industry is facing. Carriers are finding themselves having to make moves as far as how they're going to prepare for this storm and really be strategic as to what they're going to be doing. And that's going to impact it's going to impact them, the carriers themselves. It's going to impact our seniors, the members, and a lot of these things are going to have an impact on us as well.
You're talking an Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah. Right. And so the first question that I have for you, so with the changes to WellCare, with the changes that are coming to the WellCare renewals on their PDPs, would you recommend boycotting WellCare altogether to make a stance to them, to make a statement to them?
No. So I want to answer. Well, the answer is like,
okay, next question.
Next question, move on. But no, so the way that this all works to me, and the way that our industry works the best is when agents are doing what's best for the client, regardless of how it affects us personally. And then I see sometimes people will respond and say something like, well, this is not a nonprofit, right? I'm in this for the money. Yes, absolutely. We're paid to do that. But ideally we are putting ourselves in a position to help that client and putting their situation and their needs in front of our own interests. And I always tell people, and people are like, well, you can't do that. But agents are gonna do what pays them the most and this and that. The reality is there is a way to do what's best for other people and to do well financially while doing that. What I will say is that if in my mind there's any way that I could justify and maybe explain to that client that this is a better move is to go with another carrier, I probably will. Or if all things are equal, I'm probably not thinking WellCare. It's just, but I will always do what's right by a client, and I won't tell them, no, I don't sell that company. I'm just not willing to do that, because we have, like, I'm putting my name on that. And when I'm talking to seniors, I'm like, when we advertise for our company, we're not doing what's best for us. We're doing what's best for you. And so I just, ethically, I struggle with the idea of boycotting a company that's available for me to sell. Sometimes, there's these smaller companies that come into town, and every once in a while, it's like that one out of every 25 that it might make sense for them to go for one of these small companies that I don't contract with. I usually might tell them, hey, you might want to just go and contact that company. But as it stands with WellCare, I'm not going to go above and beyond for a company that's willing to do that. Here's why. And this is one of the things, is that I think it sets a dangerous precedent for our industry. And so there's a lot of agents that would tell you, who cares? It's PDPs. And it's always that thing, right? Where it's like, who cares? It's not us. And it's this idea that if it's not affecting me, I'm not going to worry about it. I don't even care to write PDPs, things like that. And it's like, okay, for you not to be upset or not to have an opinion on it, I fully understand it's not something that affects you. But if we don't kind of stand up and say something now as an industry, as professionals in this industry, then what happens when the finances don't make sense and we've agreed upon our renewals for Medicare Advantage, and then they decide, you know what, our finances aren't adding up, we're gonna have to take your Medicare Advantage renewals also. Oh wait, now that's something for us to worry about. Now it's an issue. Well, we probably should have said something even when it was prescription drug plans. And that's the thing that I feel like, because a lot of people are like, well, it's not a big deal, it's PDPs.
What can that lead to?
What can it lead to? It's a slippery slope. And so we have to, what's our response? I mean, maybe making a statement to them. There's some agents that have decided they're not even going to contract with WellCare anymore. That's something that's your prerogative to do. It's just, for me, if I'm sitting in front of someone and it makes the most sense for them to enroll into a WellCare plan, if I'm contracted, I'm gonna just do it for them. Otherwise, I'm gonna tell them, hey, look, I'm not contracted with them. I've decided not to, but you may still want to go ahead and enroll in that plan. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page. I think it's really important. At the end of the day, you have to do what's best for your client. And I feel like if you operate with that business model, I mean, that's going to lead to a lot more business in the future. It's going to lead to referrals. If you're putting a person on a plan that makes the most sense for them as an individual, and even if it turns out to be a plan that you're not going to be receiving a commission on, I'm still going to enroll them into that plan. I think about, my approach when I'm enrolling somebody is, what would I do if this was my own mother or father, right? And if it made sense to put them on a plan that I'm hearing that this plan is going to be a zero, one of their PDPs is going to be a zero premium PDP. If that's the plan that makes sense for my mom or my dad, and I'm not going to make money on it, but this is what makes sense for you, Mom, then this is the plan that I'm going to recommend for you. But even if it's not, that's my business model.
Right. But the question here is, what about, is it going to sway the way that you recommend a Medicare Advantage plan if Medicare Advantage plan is the right choice for your client?
Yeah. At the end of the day, my answer will still be no. I'm not going to let that have an impact on the recommendation that I'm going to make for a member. I'm not going to say just because they're not paying the commissions on the PDPs, I'm not going to write MAPDs or MAs for them either. I'm still going to do that. If I'm sitting with somebody and it's a WellCare Medicare Advantage plan that makes sense for my client, then that's obviously we know I'm still good as the way that things are today, I'm still going to get a commission on the Medicare Advantage plan. But the point is, let's boycott this thing, or we should all kind of come together and make that statement. I disagree. Yeah. I think that we need to, if the WellCare plan is the right plan for them, then we need to do right by our clients and enroll them into that plan. Yeah.
To be very clear, though, I do think a statement does need to be made. I think NABIP did a great job of making that statement, but we do that in, hopefully NABIP will obviously NABIP, their role is to lobby to the government, but there's people like that, or we would challenge the large FMOs, which challenge the really without calling them by name, the conglomerates that are buying out all these FMOs, challenge them to challenge WellCare and say, hey, look, you can't do this. You're crossing a line, and just kind of the way that I'm so happy to see that AmeriLife did their lawsuit and against CMS, right? And that was a big part of them stepping out. And even though like a lot of us aren't part of their organization, we kind of rely on those big entities with the power that they have to go and have these conversations. I'm hoping that the top 5 FMOs nationally for WellCare will go and let them know their displeasure with this. And it's again, it's not about the $4 renewal for your PDPs. That's not what this is about. It's really about the precedent that it sets for Medicare Advantage business. And a statement does need to be made, but it's people a lot bigger than us.
There is a way to make a statement, but I don't know that way is simply by us as agents just not boycotting them and choosing not to do business with them. And I feel like, a lot of these, I'm in a lot of groups, right, where this is a big discussion that seems to be coming up. I see 2 or 3 posts about it almost every single day. Every single day. And it's just kind of this endless circle. It's just the same thing, the same people going back and forth. But I kind of take a step back and I look at these posts and I'm like, gosh, I feel like people are putting a lot of emotion into these posts. And I think we need to remove our emotions from this and look at it, have that business, that entrepreneurial approach and say, what would I do as a business owner? What's the right move here? And the right move, I don't think it's by boycotting the carrier altogether. You still have to do what's right for your client. The statement does need to be made, but I don't think that's for us as agents to make that statement.
For sure. Let's move on from that and let's talk about question number 2 here. If you have a client that moves to a different state and they're enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan and they're concerned about whether their plan would still cover them, and should they switch plans, or how should I guide them?
So my answer to this question is yes, their plan is still going to cover them, but now that they're in a new state, they are going to have to look at new plan options that are available to them in that new state. Yeah,
and what one important thing that I would tell you is that if you are going to make that call to your carrier, make sure that you don't actually let them know before you move that you're moving. Yeah, right. Like they
I've
should. I've
seen that before.
Yeah, and so what ends up happening is when they do that, for the most part, is that like if they call on August the 27th to tell the carrier, yeah, I've moved, I'm in California now. They might even say, okay, we'll get you someone, we'll connect you with a call center representative and get you switched over. And then you say, oh, I'll do that when I get there. Okay, no problem. They update your address. September 1st, you're without a plan. So always recommend to that client, don't call ahead. Don't do that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because they might, on the other hand, they might say, or another very similar scenario, or maybe I'm even going to be saying the same thing here, but if they're telling, maybe they called the agent and they say, look, I'm going to be moving at the end of this month over to Arkansas. Okay, can I switch my plan coverage because I'm going to be there, I'm moving there at the end of the month. So I want to make sure that when I get there, that my new plan coverage is going to be there. And then the last thing you want to do is see them actually make a change, because things can happen. If they don't, maybe they end up pushing that move off for another week or another couple of weeks, or who knows, things can happen. And again, I told you, I mentioned a minute ago, I've seen that. I actually have seen it before where someone says they're going to move. They actually go and make a plan change because they kind of made the assumption that they were moving. And then that move ended up getting put off for a couple more months. But they had already made a plan change to the new plan in the new area and it just turns into a nightmare and a mess. And so you don't want to do that. Make sure the person has actually already moved, and then make the plan change.
The big concern for me is you don't get the new plan set up and you're back on original Medicare for those 2 months. Like for emergency, and then you have a person has an emergency, end up in the hospital. what's the max out of pocket on original Medicare? Right? Like let's not make that mistake, not put yourself in that kind of a situation.
And coach your client through it. If one of your clients calls you and tells you that they're going to be moving to another state, well, if you're licensed there, then, and certified to do business there, then obviously you can still take care of that piece of business. If they're not, then maybe you try to connect with, find another agent that could probably help them there. And maybe you can create a working relationship with that agent. If they're moving to Arkansas and you don't have that Arkansas license, find an agent there. And then maybe in the future, if they've got clients that are moving to your home state, maybe it's an opportunity for you guys to trade business moving forward in the future. Again, it might be something that doesn't happen all the time, but at least you have some relationships in place as you build your book of business, and you're trying to set up a good career for yourself in the industry, but also coach your client. So let me get back to that. So you want to coach your client and just make sure that, hey, before you move, make sure that you filled all of your prescriptions and that they're good to go with their medication, so that way when they get to their new location, they're not scrambling, maybe waiting for a new card or trying to get their prescriptions filled at the new pharmacy. Make sure that you have all of your prescriptions filled, so that way when you get over there, and it gives you a little bit of extra time, some cushion to get settled before you have to go and fill your medications again.
Yeah, one thing that I would make sure to let everybody know is that there's a couple of different models of business. One is I'm a local agent. I handle my state. So we live in Texas, and I don't know if you guys realize how big our state is, but like if you were to get in your car and you jump on Interstate 10 and you were to drive west and you drove for 7 hours, you would actually still be in Texas. And so the reason I share that with everybody is everybody is in a different situation. You might be listening in a state where you're real close to 3 other states or something like that. And so, but for a lot of our agents, the question comes up is like, hey, should I, my client is just moving to Missouri and I want to get a license over there so that way I can get those renewals. And for me, my thought is, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go out and get a Missouri license if I'm not planning on actually writing business there. And the reason is because if you're not writing business, there are fees that you will accrue because of the fact that you are that you're not writing business. So what I would tell you is like, man, if you have a plan that you're going to start writing business in that state, then absolutely go get that license. But it doesn't make financial sense for one. Say, well, what if it's a family? Well, then that's up to you. You make your decision. But I personally wouldn't recommend that unless you do. There are some agents that mostly do sales over the phone, and they'll mail out to multiple states, and by all means, go ahead. Or they'll do Facebook advertising in multiple states. By all means, go ahead and get that a license in that state. But it is something that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah. So if you're one of those local agents, also one thing, it's not like life insurance. My understanding is your uplines also have to be licensed and certified in those states as well, right? Like for your upline,
not
so if
like
you're life insurance where if my upline doesn't have a license in this other state, you can still get a license and write a piece of life business on the Medicare side.
It's hard for United. It's like that.
Okay.
Like different carriers have different rules, but for United, it's definitely like that. You can't, you can't get appointed in that state if your upline's not. Yeah. It seems like Humana, I think that they use like the top line hierarchy, but United definitely
requires it.
They require it. Yeah, they're pretty strict about it. Let me go on to the next question here. It says, a client of mine is on a Medicare supplement and is considering switching to a Medicare Advantage plan because of the added benefits like dental and vision. What factors should I consider? Should I help them consider before making this decision?
That's a good question. And I feel like that one can go a lot of different ways. It really just depends on the individual's situation and what their health needs are. But I think our approach always has to be, we always have to lead with what are their health needs. And those other benefits like dental and vision and the over-the-counter benefits and the gym memberships and all those things, those are extra benefits. So I always tell people, let's not make our decision based on the extra benefits, because these are medical plans first. And so we have to consider what those core benefits look like, and we have to have a good understanding of what your unique health needs are. And if it turns out that the Medicare supplement in this case is the plan that's going to make the most sense, maybe because you've got a lot of health things going on and you're seeing a lot of specialists, or maybe you've got some surgeries coming up, or maybe you're, if you're going through like radiation or chemotherapy, again, you just got a lot of health needs. It may not make the most sense. So even though you see these shiny things, it's like, well, there's dental and there's vision over there on the other side and all these other things. They're not understanding what that, for lack of a better term, what that trade-off could be. And, that could lead to higher out-of-pocket expenses on the medical side, just so that you can have some dental and vision. Yeah. So again, it all just depends on the individual.
Yeah, it's the question that I would always go back to is, why did you decide on a Medicare supplement in the first place?
I love that.
I just want to, because a lot of times it's not the original agent, right? So the question that I would ask to that senior is, do you remember what made you decide on a Medicare supplement in the first place when you made this decision? And someone will be like, I don't remember this, what the guy sold me, and say, okay, well, let's have a full conversation. What I would like to do, if it's okay with you, sir or ma'am, is what I would like to do is ask you the questions that I would ask if you were just turning 65 and I was trying to figure out what direction that I would help you to find out what's most important to you. Because right now it sounds like you see that this dental and vision is something that you'd like to have at no additional cost. Completely understand that. But what I'd like to do is go through and find out what else is important to you, so that way I can help you make the most informed decision. Some agents might sit in front of you and say, okay, you're ready for an Advantage plan? Let's go ahead and do that. But I want to make sure not to put you in a situation where you're calling me a year from now and saying, Raul, you didn't tell me that I was going to sacrifice this, or this. And so we'll go on in that conversation and just ask them, like, hey, just out of curiosity, can you tell me, who are your doctors? Are they, I have this doctor, this doctor, this doctor, this doctor. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Let's just say that I were to go in and find a Medicare Advantage plan that has all of these extra benefits that you're talking about. If I were to do that and I were to find out that all your doctors work with that plan, you'd probably say, oh, good, there's no obstacles, right? The one question that I would have is, if for some reason 3 years down the road, this particular doctor, this cardiologist that you see, ends up no longer contracting with this Advantage plan that we enrolled you in, would you call me and say, I'm still loving all this extra coverage that I'm getting, no problem? Or would you say, Raul, how do I get back on this Medicare supplement? And if you say, Raul, how do I get back on this Medicare supplement? This might not be the right option for you. So I'm kind of having that full conversation, and really I'm very cautious with, especially when someone who's already receiving care moves off of a Medicare supplement plan into an Advantage plan, and just kind of giving them the full picture before they make an enrollment decision like that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, actually, I love that. I feel like should have been taking notes there, saying, all right, next time. Yeah. But I love that you kind of went back. Okay, let's talk about the reason why you decided to enroll into this Medicare supplement in the first place. And then depending on what their response is, it's going to give you, the agent, a better understanding of what direction that conversation is going to go. Again, aside from the dental and vision, while you were talking, I was thinking, well, what if it's cost? Well, what if cost is another factor, because some states, you may see the rate increase, year over year, and it may have become unaffordable, or they've got they've got it with a standalone PDP where they're having to meet these higher deductibles, and maybe they have higher cost share, that it just financially, it's not making sense for them because they just feel like they're spending a whole lot of money.
And that is one of those things where they've had a change in their situation since they signed up for it, but it's something that you would uncover during that conversation, and you've got to have that full conversation, because if that conversation did go that way where they were like, well, to be real honest, it's not necessarily just about this, vision and dental coverage. It would be nice to have, but the truth is that my rates are now $280 a month. And when I signed up, it was like $96 a month. I can't afford it anymore. That's the truth of the situation.
Yeah.
Well, if that's a conversation and you're having a conversation with someone, I would still tell them, hey, look, this is what you might be sacrificing. But some people that I talk to tell me, well, Raul, it doesn't matter how much I want a Medicare supplement. I just can't afford it anymore. Yeah. And if that's the conversation, if that's where we're at, then obviously it's a lot easier to make that kind of a change, right? So you've got to fully uncover and unpack what the situation is.
Yeah, and I think also understanding the trial right period, right? If they've always had a Medicare supplement from the time that they became eligible or when they turned 65, then you open up the conversation about the trial right period where they can pretty much test drive a Medicare Advantage plan for up to a year. And if it turned out not to be what they thought or what they expected or were expecting, they'll have an opportunity to go back to that Medicare supplement with no questions asked, because the last thing you want is to move somebody over to a Medicare Advantage plan and then they're unhealthy and they're at a point where they're no longer able to return to that Medicare supplement. So just make sure, I think the heart, of this question or our response is make sure that you have that conversation with your client and really talk through it. Don't be so quick to just say, okay, you want that Advantage plan that's got dental and vision? I'll be right over there and let's get you signed up.
Start counting your commission right there, right? Like, oh, that's new to Medicare, new to Medicare Advantage, right? Yeah, and it's just so important to give people the full picture but also get to understand why people are making the decisions that they're making. It makes it a lot easier to sleep at night, because I have kind of been on the other end of phone calls where people were surprised by the fact that they lost their doctors and say, man, these cancer doctors. So we're here in Texas, and there is a group called MD Anderson. It's a kind of a research hospital for cancer. And I know that they were in network for one carrier, and just recently they announced that they're no longer in network for that carrier. And there's people who would have literally left their Medicare supplement and gone into that plan because of the fact that particular group was in network. And it was just announced that they're no longer a network. Like, man, that stings. Yeah. And so we've got to be ready to have that conversation. One last thing I would like to touch on is, because you did mention trial right. And so a lot of times we mention things like that, and then people are like, wait, well, how do I actually use that? So let's talk about that real quick. So if you have an individual that enrolls into an Advantage plan for the very first time, 6 months later they call you and say, man, I'm tired of all these referrals. You told me, but man, there's a lot of referrals. Yeah. If 6 months from now, if it's not AEP, how do they make their change?
They have to they'll have to get with the carrier. And so we actually went through that situation recently, and I think they have to submit, it might even depend on the carrier, but I think they also have to submit documentation as well along with the application. But this particular carrier, the agent was instructed to submit a paper application and send it in that way. But I would guess that the process is going to be a little bit different for each carrier, just depending on who the carrier is.
Yeah, so the specific rule in the guaranteed issue, like in the book, says that they need to call back to the carrier that they were originally on, try to get enrolled back on that plan. If they don't offer it anymore, then they can shop with another company. But usually it's going to be a call to them.
To the carrier.
But disenrolling from that Medicare Advantage plan, how do you do that?
That's what it was. The paperwork. They're like, how do I get off of this Advantage plan and get my PDP back?
Special enrollment period,
right, SEP.
And it's SEP trial right.
Okay.
And so that's something that you can use any time of the year. I think that's an important thing to share with agents, because a lot of times it doesn't make sense. They're like, how can they do that? It's not AEP. How can they how can they enroll back? Or it's not OEP. How do we get back to original Medicare and a prescription drug plan? And that's the way to do it. It was SEP. Trial right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, guy, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up right there. We're just about that 30-minute mark. But, man, we really, our hope is to help agents to be more successful. And so if you feel like you're getting some help from us, don't hesitate to reach out on any of our social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We've got a presence out there, and most people who listen to our show listen on on their smartphone on a Spotify or on Apple. And so don't hesitate to also find us. We're all over social media. We'd love to interact, and we'd love to, if there's questions that you say, you know what, these are some questions that I've had. Don't hesitate to send them out to us. We'll go ahead and answer them and do the best we can to answer them and to kind of get you the help that you may be looking for. So any other things before we wrap this up?
I like it. That's it. That's
all right.
I got.
So we're getting ready. AEP is coming up. Be ready and get excited because I think it's still going to be a great one. So until next time.